Reverse by Black A Cat. Chapter 15. Anamnesis. Kurama steps out of the shower with a sigh, catching his towel from the hook on the wall and dragging it over his head. He feels wrung out, hollowed, but maybe it's not entirely in a bad way. The memory of his Naruto is foremost in his mind, but with Naruto the child so close by, asleep on the futon he's sharing with Gaara and dreaming peacefully, it's easier to recall the final smile Naruto gave him, Naruto's faith and fiery determination, rather than his death. He still hates Kaguya with everything in him, hates the goddess more than he's ever hated anyone or anything in his long life. But Kurama could never hate Naruto. Resenting his Naruto for sending him here, for trapping him in this body, for dying without even letting Kurama try to save him, has never sat all that comfortably with him, either. Scrubbing the towel over his drying hair, Kurama takes 2 steps across the small, entirely soaked bathroom. Naruto and Gaara apparently decided to have a splash fight, and Kurama would be annoyed, but he remembers his Naruto coaxing Gaara into doing the same, both of them 20 years old and Kages and still absolute brats. There are puddles underfoot, and the air is filled with steam, making it as humid as a jungle. That thought draws his attention to the memories of his clone, who faced Kakashi and Shisui just before it disappeared. Perhaps it's to be expected that those two caught up first, while the other clone is still leading Itachi and Tenzo on a spiraling chase through southern river country. Kakashi is a terrifyingly good tracker, after all, and while Shisui is an unknown beyond the fact that he has a Sharingan, Kurama's happy to assume he's a talented bastard as well. Sarutobi wasn't pulling any punches when he picked this team. He doesn't, for a moment, believe Shisui's words about finding a solution if he returns to Konoha. However, it was easy to see in that moment that Shisui believed them, and for an Uchiha to have that much faith in his village, 6 years after the Kyuubi's attack, means something. Distantly, Kurama can recall the knowledge that Itachi had a friend who helped set him on his path, whose death gave him the Migenkyo, and who was all but killed by Danzo. He never really tried to remember the name. What did he care about one long-dead Uchiha, after all? But now we can't help but suspect that it was Shisui. Naruto always called that particular spark of devotion and implacable stubbornness the will of fire, and Kurama supposes that that's what he saw in Shisui's eyes when he faced him. If you come peacefully, I'm sure we can work something out. You don't have to be separated from him. I wouldn't ask you to abandon your family, and I don't think the Saindame would either. What are the odds that the Saindame sent the 2 Uchiha who are practically responsible for the massacre after him? Kurama can't decide whether he's amused or annoyed about it. If he weren't quite as cynical, he might even put it down to fate. But part of some grand plan or not, it does give Kurama a chance he's not likely to come across again. He doesn't have time to make another clone and send it after Shisui and Kakashi. Besides, they'd be even more suspicious since they already saw the one they were chasing disappear, but well, it's simple enough to tug on his connection to the other clone and just change its orders ever so slightly. Kurama chuckles, low and amused, as he withdraws his chakra. He gets to help save one of Naruto's precious people a lot of grief and mess with an Uchiha at the same time. There are perks to everything, it seems. Adding in the fact that this is a particularly annoying Uchiha just makes it sweeter. Kurama still remembers all too well Naruto's brief fight with Itachi and having to suffer the indignity of getting a crow stuffed down his throat. Manifestation of chakra or not, some things just shouldn't happen, and getting assaulted with a bird is one of them. Naruto would laugh at him, Kurama thinks suddenly, hands pausing on the towel. The thought is bittersweet, but strangely good. Naruto would laugh at him for all these petty little grudges, for all the tricks Kurama has played. He would love the fact that Kurama snatched Gaara right from under Suna's nose, and that he's used clones the way Naruto always did. That he's planning all these little bits of unnecessary embarrassment for his pursuers, and making friends with the other Jinchuriki. It might not be quite what Naruto himself would have done if he had managed to come back in time, but Kurama can't help but feel that the man would definitely approve. It feels like warmth unfurling inside of him. like sunlight coaxing plants to bloom. Just a little spark of brightness unfolding in his chest, creeping out through his veins until Kurama can feel himself smiling. There's no jaded curve to it, nothing held back, just happiness. A small dart of joy that grows larger with each passing day, with every smile this child Naruto gives him, with every hug, with every step taken, with every change Kurama makes to himself, to Naruto, to the world as a whole. Small changes, small bits, but they're snowballing forward, and that's enough. Kurama's world died once already. He will never, ever allow it to happen again. Kurama takes a breath, slings the towel around his shoulders, and leans forward over the small sink to swipe a hand across the fogged surface of the mirror. Bye, Kurama. Kick some ass for me, okay? And look in the mirror as soon as you can, got it? Naruto had been smirking when he said that, sly and amused and full of mirth, and Kurama holds on to that image now. He takes a breath, squares his shoulders, and meets his own gaze in the silvered glass. Dark red eyes, not sky blue, but they're the same shape as Naruto's. A straight nose, stubborn jaw, high cheekbones. It looks like Kushina almost, and without Minato's coloring to distract the eye, the resemblance is easy to see. It's Naruto's face, with hardly any changes, and Kurama feels his chest ache with gratitude for that small fact. He reaches out, claws clicking against the glass, and traces the shape, almost able to see Naruto in it. There are no whisker marks, none of the laugh lines and crow's feet that Naruto was sporting at the end, but like overlapping images, Kurama can see the ghost of Naruto within his own face, and it's far more of a comfort than he had thought it could be. The hair is just ridiculous, though, and nothing will convince Kurama otherwise. It makes him chuckle softly as he touches the choppy strands because he remembers that fight. Naruto had been growing his hair out through laziness in regards to cutting it more than anything else, and it had been a good foot past his shoulders when they'd been called to distract Kaguya's forces so their companions could get away. One of her undead soldiers had grabbed his ponytail and refused to let go, giving all the rest of them a chance to dogpile him, and Naruto had screamed and flailed and been unable to get away until Sakura dove into the fray after him. She had knocked the animated corpses back, then sawed Naruto's ponytail off with a kunai and a distinct lack of pity for its plight. Kurama had been laughing too hard to help incinerate the soldiers, and Naruto had sulked for days, not even allowing Sakura to neaten up the ragged cut she had made. Carding his fingers through the crimson strands, Kurama gives in and laughs at the memory, feeling warm down to his bones. He wraps the towel around his waist, then heads for the hall, stepping out into the chilly air. There's still a light on in Roshi's room, and he knocks briskly on the door. There's a pause, then faint footsteps, and a moment later Roshi is blinking at him, one eyebrow lifting. If this is a proposition or some way of buying off the room, he says suspiciously, eyeing Kurama's leg of clothing, I'm flattered, but I need to get an early start. Kurama scoffs and rolls his eyes. Screw you, he huffs. I just wanted to borrow a damn kunai. If anything, the eyebrow lifts higher and the other comes up to join it. You don't have one of your own? Roshi asks, faintly incredulous. Holding up one hand, Kurama wiggles his fingers, showing off the sharp points of his nails. I've never needed them, but it's kind of hard to cut hair with these. Roshi snorts, turning away from the door and waving Kurama to follow him. Yeah, it's about time you did something like that, he says, amused. You look like someone set the mop on fire. Kurama would take offense, except that the haircut was hardly his idea. My friend's doing, he explains. He was an idiot. It's too hard to hide the threat of fondness in his tone, so Kurama doesn't even try. It gets him a sharp glance from the other redhead, but after a moment, Roshi's expression shifts into a faint smile, and he turns his attention back to his pack with a soft snort. Well, I'm sure he wouldn't blame you for neatening that up, no matter how much you miss him. Yep. A whole weapons pouch comes flying at Kurama's face, and he catches it automatically. Must be. You're probably going to need it more than I do, though, so take it. A little surprised, Kurama weighs the pouch in his hand. Muscle memory from Mito, Kushina, and Naruto as well means that he knows how to use them, but he honestly hadn't thought of using a weapon beyond his own body before. He's never had to, after all. This might be an edge, though, if he needs to escape from the freak squad again. Thanks, he says gruffly, looking down to fiddle with the tie, holding it closed. Another thing I owe you for. Roshi snorts. Let's call it a thank you for the warning. He dismisses the matter with a one-shouldered shrug. All for helping on, if you want. He's a fool, but he's a friend too. I'd rather this Akatsuki didn't kill him before I have the chance to do it. They're definitely friends. Kurama laughs before he can help it, all too familiar with the sentiment, and nods in agreement. Alright, thanks anyway, I appreciate it. You're looking out for all the Jinchuriki, Roshi reminds him. Least we could do is make things a bit easier on you in return. I'd offer you a change of clothes as well, but I don't think mine would fit you. Given that Roshi is a good 20 centimeters shorter than him, for all that he's a fair bit rather, Kurama doesn't doubt it. This is enough, he says, waving that away. Thanks. Let me know when you're leaving. Roshi nods, smiling faintly. I will. Good night, Kurama. Good night, Roshi. Kurama returns, stepping back. He has a hand on the door when Roshi says quietly, I nearly killed my best friend the first time I lost my temper with her. That's why I left Iwa. Maybe it's not quite like seeing her die, but she was so scared of me afterwards that it was still the same as losing her completely. Not that I blame her, but loss always hurts, and it always will. To make up for it, I learned to control my power. He doesn't say, this is your way of making up for it. That he doesn't need to. They can both hear the words regardless. Kurama's not sure if Roshi thinks he's a Jinchuriki as well, and assumes Kurama's friend got caught in Akatsuki's crossfire, or if he's just good enough at reading people to see the guilt that's all wrapped up with Kurama's grief. Regardless, it doesn't matter. Kurama clears his throat, eyes on the wood in front of him, and gives a jerky nod. I'm going to tear Akatsuki apart until there's nothing left but ashes, he says gruffly. If you want to help, keep your head down and warn the others to do the same. Roshi makes a quiet noise that's part amusement, part assent, and Kurama doesn't wait for him to say anything else, stepping out into the hall and quietly closing the door behind him. He pauses, taking a breath, and then closes his hand a little more tightly around the pouch of kunai. They clink together under his grip, and he forces himself to move, padding back into the bathroom and dropping them on the counter. He pulls one out, studying the well-maintained edge for a moment, and then glances at his reflection in the mirror again. It's not exactly Naruto's face that stares back at him, but it's similar enough that Kurama smiles a bit and lifts the kunai. The first ragged edge of crimson hair falls away under the gentle press of the blade, fluttering down to the counter, and Kurama takes a breath. This is the body Naruto left for him. This is the task Naruto wanted him to complete. He's doing it in a way Naruto would have liked, in a way that would have made him laugh, and that's enough. It makes Kurama smile, remembering Naruto's request, remembering the little blonde boy sleeping just a few doors down, wrapped up in his new friend and entirely at peace, and he laughs a little to himself. Maybe it's not enough to heal the hurt entirely, but the warmth inside him is almost enough to rival the ache, and that's a damn good start. With steady hands, Kurama slices through the next choppy edge of crimson hair, and it doesn't feel like losing his connection to the past. It feels like a step forward, an advance, and Kurama thinks if he were here, his Naruto would be the one urging him on. They break free of the jungle just as the sun starts to set, and Kakashi can honestly say he's never been quite so glad to leave a place behind. Kurama's trick itches it and nags like a scabbing wound. He should have noticed, should have guessed. If he'd been thinking more clearly, if he had been able to see through the anger and worry and grief caused by Naruto's kidnapping, maybe he would have taken a moment longer, looked underneath the way he always urges his teammates, and noticed the misdirection for what it was. There's little doubt that the Kurama Tenzo and Itachi are chasing is a fake as well. The clone looked far too pleased with Kakashi's question for it to be anything else. 2 clones to lead them astray, and they're woe behind Kurama now, with little idea of where he's headed. Kakashi really wants to hurt something. Possibly himself, but definitely Kurama as well. Since night is rapidly closing in, he comes to a halt with a heavy sigh, dropping down to sit on a sandy bit of ground. They are near the Wind Country border since it's slightly easier to navigate with the lack of vegetation, and Kakashi knows that Tenzo and Itachi will be returning this way as soon as they realize they're chasing a fake. Once they meet, Kakashi isn't sure what they'll do, since Kurama has several days head start on them now. That's enough to put him almost anywhere in the western elemental countries. Heck, he could even be back in Ghana for all Kakashi knows, and it's frustrating enough to make Kakashi want to put his fist through something solid! "We're stopping then?" Shisui asks, sinking down next to him. He lets out a tired breath, dragging his fingers through his flyaway hair. "You're so kind, Captain." Kakashi doesn't roll his eyes, but it's a near thing. "Just a few hours. We'll keep going once the moon is up. I want to find the others as soon as possible." Shisui opens his mouth to answer, probably with something insubordinate and faintly mocking, knowing him, but then freezes. In the same instant, Kakashi leaps back to his feet, the sense of rapidly approaching chakra enough to put his hackles up. It's no one familiar, definitely not another Konoha shinobi, but there's an edge of aggression to it that says this is hardly a friendly encounter. He reaches for his tanto automatically, aware of Shisui doing the same as the Uchiha flashes to his feet and spins to put their backs together. A moment later, 6 shapes come blurring over the rise and surround them in a rush. Kakashi bristles, tempted to lift his hitayate so he can even the odds a little, but he restrains himself. The uniforms are familiar, as is the face of the man in front of him. "Baki," Kakashi says wearily, eyeing the Kazekage's main guard, one of Suna's top jonin. "You're a long way from home." Baki watches him in return, visible eye narrowed above the red tattoos on his cheek.
"Tage, I could say the same. What's Konoha's the best tracker doing in river country?"
"Trekking," Kakashi answers, cheerfully bland. He's not about to tell Suna Shinobi that Konoha had its Jinchuriki swiped. Suna is only an ally because they have no other choice. But this is a chance he can't afford to pass up. Suna keeps a close eye on the desert, and if Kurama headed west, they'd likely know. "We're looking for a shinobi who's wanted for questioning in Konoha. Have you seen him? Red hair, short, kind of grumpy. I think he's still barefoot, too." Because Kakashi's watching, he catches the faint widening of Baki's eye, the flicker of surprise that crosses the Jonin's face before he can hide it. There's a long moment of silence, and then Baki glances over at the woman beside him. A silent conversation passes between them, and Kakashi can feel Shisui tensing at his back, ready for an attack. He doesn't think Baki will give that kind of order, though, and he's starting to get a sneaking suspicion just what it is this god is looking for.
"Dark skin?"
Baki asks, finally glancing back to meet Kakashi's gaze squarely.
"No hitayate or visible weapons? Accompanied by a 3-tailed white fox as tall at the shoulder as a man's elbow?"
Well, the giant fox is a surprise and not entirely a pleasant one. No wonder Kurama is so far ahead of them if he's got that shape-shifting, not a summons for transportation. Kakashi grimaces, releasing his hold on his tanto and shifting out of a ready stance. "Uzumaki Kurama," he agrees unhappily. "He escaped Konoha a few days ago and we've been looking for him since. He's in Suna?"
"Not anymore," Baki says, dryly waving his squad back. "Guards caught a glimpse of them escaping over the wall 2 days ago, but a sandstorm delayed us in giving chase. Uzumaki kidnapped the Kazekage's youngest son on his way out, and we were dispatched to find him and recover the boy."
There's a certain sinking sensation in Kakashi's stomach, and he trades wary glances with Shisui. They're well aware that Suna holds the Ichibi, even if they're not entirely certain who its container is. Given that Jinchuriki are usually chosen from among a Kage's close family in order to ensure their loyalty, Kakashi thinks he can guess why Kurama snatched the boy. He's not about to tell Baki about Naruto being taken as well, since the man will likely make the same connection Kakashi just did, but the situation is worrying. The fact that Kurama is collecting Jinchuriki can't lead to anything good. The countries need Jinchuriki to keep the balance of power as it is. Remove them and every country is going to start pointing fingers and making accusations, and the world can't afford another all-out war. Not so soon after the last. "We ended up following a clone through northern river country," Kakashi allows.
But we lost his trail there. The other half of my team went south, and we're trying to catch up with them now.
Baki accepts the information with the tip of his chin.
Scouts found tracks headed northeast out of the village, but couldn't follow them before the storm broke. We've got teams searching up and down the border now, but I haven't heard anything yet. Have you faced Uzumaki?
Kakashi inclines his head.
He's strong, he says.
Then hesitates.
After a moment of inner debate, he adds, we suspect he's a Jinchuriki.
After all, if Suna does manage to find him before Kakashi's team can, they'll need every advantage to actually capture him. And once they do, refusing to return Naruto, a citizen of Konoha, might as well be an act of war. Even though Naruto is a container, he's too young to be an asset, and Konoha is stronger than Suna even without a Jinchuriki. They can afford a war to get Naruto back, Suna can't. Laying at least some of their cards on the table is worth the risk of sharing knowledge. At that, Baki blanches, and several of his shinobi pale as well.
Muttering a low curse, Baki runs a hand over his face and nods sharply. Thank you, he says grimly. We weren't aware. I knew he was powerful, but...
Kakashi gives him a crooked smile, understanding. It's one thing to face off against a powerful shinobi. It's another entirely to go head-to-head with a shinobi capable of calling on the vast power of a Bijou. There's a reason most Jinchuriki who leave their villages are pretty much never taken back. There's simply no one capable of it.
Should we ask to join forces?
Shisui asks, voice low enough that only Kakashi's ears pick it up. He pauses, considering, and glances back at his partner. Shisui meets his gaze with a faint smile and a tip of one shoulder, and Kakashi turns the matter over in his mind. Their villages are technically allies, so he might as well make the offer. If nothing else, it would be good to have access to Suna's resources, and if they do manage to find Kurama, returning the Kazekage's son will only help strengthen ties. Can we offer our assistance? He asks Baki. Once we rejoin the rest of our squad, we can try to pick up the trail along the border. My nin dogs know his scent. They might have more luck than us. If the offer surprises Baki, he doesn't show it. Instead, he mulls it over for a moment and nods sharply.
Accepted, he says shortly. We'll be heading north from here, checking the border. You'll be able to find us?
We will, Kakashi confirms. Good hunting, Baki. Baki laughs, rough and surprised.
Same to you, Watake. See you in a few days.
Kakashi offers him a rise salute, and Baki returns it, then waves his squad away. They head back over the rise towards the north and disappear into the darkening twilight. Once all trace of their chakra has disappeared, Kakashi finally lets the tension ease out of his shoulders and slumps with a muttered curse, pressing a hand over his face. Kurama is collecting Jinchuriki. There is absolutely no way this is going to end well for any of the countries involved. Behind him, Shisui blows out a heavy breath, sinking down to sit on his heels. Wow, he says admiringly. We are so utterly screwed! Kakashi thinks about denying it, but given the circumstances, Shisui might actually be understating things. Honestly, Kakashi can't think of a better way to spark another world war than to go around stealing Jinchuriki. It's already a sticking point for most of the countries that a lot of them become missing nin. To have a stranger with uncertain aims and unknown ties start scooping them up is just asking for trouble. I'll send a message to the Hokage, he says at length. He can decide whether to alert the other Kages or not. We need to find Tenzo and Itachi as soon as possible. Kurama already has a solid lead on us. So, no resting then? Shisui says with a tired sigh, but he rises to his feet and gives Kakashi a crooked smile. Lead on, Captain. I've got your back! At least Kakashi thinks a little wryly. He's not going to have to deliver the message to Sarutobi in person. Call him a coward, but he'd rather be well out of range when the Saindame hears about this.